There we go.
Right, are we live? No.
We're getting there. There we go. Now we should be.
Right. Okay. So apologies for technical duties, technical issues. I think we are now live.
Oh, you're not live.
We're not live. We're still not live apparently.
Sorry, I'm moving. That's fine. It was taking a while because Restream was struggling.
Was it the internet?
I don't know.
It's live
We are
now.
now.
It's not live. It's not. End stream.
So we are live. I do technical difficulties that we're having.
We're live.
We are live. Okay, so I'm actually finally live.
Sounds
Fantastic. Okay, so there's a few technical issues, but we are now back. This is episode 5. So just to make it very clear before we start, so the views expressed here are the personal experiences of those who are talking. Views are not representations of P-Town Radio or the organizations or individuals affiliated with it. Content might be triggering and the experiences are for marginalized people. So please do leave the live stream if you need a break. You are Dante, so I am currently the chair. So my name is Keith. I am currently with New Dice. We have a new person here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Yorgos. Really cool to be here.
And we also have Mimi.
Hello.
Who's representing
Queer Out
Queer Out
Loud.
Loud today. So episode 5, it's interesting to be the chair. As a couple of weeks ago, I was just the guest, which is really good. So let's start with you. Yeah.
Thank
Do
you.
you want to just describe a little about yourself? Why you're here today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not of this land, as I imply, but I'm here today because of my connection with Stu. So I've a few years now. I know the fabulous work they do for everything from New Dice to ethical activities, kind of for. I would say for the world, I really appreciate what they said. That the podcast is about language, it's about power. We oftentimes have conversations anyway. So I thought, great, yeah, let's engage with this. So yeah, sounded really excited, and here we are.
So as a Greek person, how do you feel that affects you culturally compared to like the UK and Greece?
In terms of language, the use of language,
Yeah.
I think that whilst I've been quite privileged in that when I was very, 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 very little, I got to learn Greek and English at the same time, and some of the the use of vocabularies, the real corporeal, being able to pronounce things a certain way was already there. Still, not having lived in the UK for a really long period of time and only just returning 3-ish years ago. Has it been 3 years? I don't remember. Something like that. Interesting the ways in which I'm oftentimes reminded that I'm not of this place, and that usually happens in these day-to-day moments where I might use a phrase incorrectly, or maybe I don't understand or recognize a phrase that is really, really just common knowledge for everyone else. So how does that affect me? I think sometimes it can create a slight degree of alienation between me and the people that I'm talking to. So the moment that they realize that I'm not English, not everyone, but sometimes, that it might create a bit of a divide between us. And so I did mask my foreignness for quite a long time. It's something that I try to do less now by means of surrounding myself with people who I know are just going to be kind regardless. So yeah.
I'm jumping in here.
No, go.
When we were setting up the captions for this, I asked about the spelling. You started spelling out George instead of Yorgos. You do because of that, trying to protect yourself?
Yeah, that's very well spotted, actually. I've been doing that for a while. Whenever I would introduce myself to anyone, I was like, I don't want to inconvenience anyone. That's also kind of my underlying people pleaser tendencies that come from, Anyway, we're not going to go there. But it's probably just been for the last maybe 4 or 5 months that I've said, no, I'm gonna start using my name, because that is my real name, and I would do it for anyone else. So hopefully I can, maybe I can expect that from other people.
Okay, did you feel actually in the UK that is actually a barrier? Because Italian. It's called Gianni. A lot of people say his name's spelled like Gianni or Gianni, and in the end, he's now given up. He just doesn't care anymore, just whatever. So I'm just thinking how you feel like wanting to empower yourself to go, no, this is my name, and you need to get it right.
Yeah, I think generally people have been really, really good. There does seem to be a cultural thing where people are embarrassed of getting it wrong, and so I'm not even going to try because I'm going to mess it up or like that. And the truth is, it doesn't bloody matter. You know, it's if you're willing to give it a shot, you can call it whatever, call it Yorgos, whatever. It's okay. I really appreciate. I think anyone should just give it a shot, and also it's correct. So if you say it, so I know how to say it, then we can do that. We can have a chat. So that's people who don't want to give it a shot at all because they feel embarrassed to do so, or people who really embrace it and they actually do want to learn and jump on that.
Nice.
I mean, you were saying earlier actually about you used something to get your name wrong quite a lot.
Yeah. So I technically have two names. Mimi is not my legal name, and part of the reason for changing it is the fact that it's Scottish and Irish are the two different like origins of my birth name, and there are so many different spellings and so many different pronunciations, and then on top, parents pronounced it differently.
Wow, how people have pronounced it differently because it feels fairly straightforward. Like,
Mimi is not my birth name, so my
sorry.
birth name is the one that my parents would pronounce differently. So my legal name is Katrina or Katriona, and those are just awkward names anyway. But it's spelled with a C, and it's meant to be spelled with a K as well, and it'd just be that whole like it's not an overly difficult name, and obviously it's a very privileged position in that it is an English or a British name as well, which means that it's easy for people to pronounce if they figure out what the pronunciation is. But then like the spellings and stuff like that, and it's so much being a child with a nickname of Cat. Not a good thing to go through primary school with because children are annoying. Even then with it still that kind of I suppose that privilege of having a very British name, and it's still so exhausting. I can't imagine having a name that has just a different alphabet and different pronunciation and stuff like that, where so many ways to get your name wrong, and then the people that just can't be bothered with it. But even with Mimi, where there are 4 different pronunciations that people can go for that.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with this name. My sister did when she was 4, so I can't correct people.
It becomes especially confusing so the way that it works with Greek names is that you have your full formal name. So if that would be Georgios, and that's on your passport, that's where you get on official documents. You then have your day-to-day name, everyone calls you, which is what I've introduced myself as to you today, which is Yorgos.
Yeah.
Name, which is George.
Yeah.
Also in English, you can have any iteration of the previous 2 that I mentioned. And so then, for example, I'm writing an email, and in the official signature, I have the full name. But then when I introduce myself to people as something, I say, well, no, actually, my name is this. But then people get really overwhelmed, and I don't blame them, and they don't know what to refer to me as, and there's a bit of confusion. So it does get a little bit messy, and it's no one's fault.
It's just that effort, I think, is something that with so many things around culture and this, we can actually segue ourselves onto the main point of the last 4 episodes. But that whole just saying that you can't be bothered is so much power to have over someone, where it's my energy and effort to put into human decency has more say than your existence does, which is a segue to power.
Yeah.
How are you going to segue us, Keith?
Well, actually, I was going to think about it as power. Actually, just think about because think about experience I had when I was growing up. Because my name is Keith, which I hate, but the amount of times people call me Chief Keith or Clark Kent because my surname is Clark. So a lot of my times I was never called by my actual name when I was growing up. And even when I was a student, when I was a teacher, they found out my name was Keith, and I was like, Keith Lemon. So it's actually, they've got that power then. They know your name, that power of a name is really important because actually it can empower you as a person to go, no, this is who I am. But at the same time, it can actually give you anxiety and things because that name means something very, very different to you, or how, a birth name that you don't want anymore and then you're choosing that powering to you because that name is then yours and you can then control it and take it. Like you saying George, not want to be called George because actually, no, I'm not. I'm Greek. I'm empowering. That's
Yeah.
important to me. So I think that's quite important. I mean, how you feel about that? But.
Yeah, it is. One addition here. I think what's interesting about it is that whilst you can say to people, "That's my real name. That's what I want people to call me as," like there's still a bit of work involved in that, some emotional work to because you feel like you're creating some kind of expectation of others, and then also I'm not used to it either. It's been so many years where people have called me George, so it's an active process. For example, I had my first therapy session last week, and therapist asked me, how would you like me to call you? I said, look, I'm doing this thing with my real name, but I just want to be George here. Just call me George is fine. I don't want to do this work here right now.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say about power and names is also, I think it's interesting to think about the origin of names and how those are given to us in the first place. So when I was born and my parents were thinking about what they were going to name, my mum really wanted to name me Achilles. Then my father's father got really, really upset at the possibility of that happening and said, how could you even consider not giving the child the name of his father's father, which is how it happens in Greece. So there's a real interesting dynamic there with, gender and masculinity, obviously, and how that works. And so I ended up as Yorgos, which is my granddad's name.
And actually, just remind me, actually, I'm not going to go into the names because of the students that I used to have, but the parents literally named every single one of their children after a Greek god, and that actually had an effect. Kind of empowered by it at the same time. Then we go, you'd take the proverbial out of him, should we say, rather than I was going to say another word then. But because of
I'm giving you permission to swear.
Okay, taking the piss then. Out of his name just because of what it was, and that affected him quite a lot because he's also autistic, which added. Yeah, I'm not sure where to go now. So,
having that like the father's father thing and having the meaning that goes into names. I think we had this conversation with Jabbo last week, maybe on air, but maybe I just had this conversation. I can't remember. Everything is blended together.
Isn't it just?
But yeah, having that kind of like this name means this, and then how that kind of is like manifesting for you for the rest of your life. But for me, in terms of going by Mimi, was a name that my sister chose, and this was just after I had moved. And she was a little baby at the time, trying to figure out how a cat was a human. Didn't make any sense. Named me after her favorite cat, which is a really cute story. But also was that I just moved to Plymouth. I kind of started trying to be mentally stable after real bad years and stuff like that, and trying to that, and it was that whole permission to restart with a new name. And so that was, I suppose, very symbolic for me, but also one of those ones that I think I do care quite a lot when people pronounce Mimi wrong, because it's but this is my new start. This is the whole actually being able to kind of have control over stuff. And I think it's that names are so personal because it's how you're going to be referred to for your entire life. And the given name versus chosen name. There's also that fun stuff about the Fae, and I think Discworld guy, oh my god, Terry Pratchett had some fun name stuff as well, which is just going into nerd territory. But...
You just reminded me actually that I had recently. Actually, I think I'm talking to Stu about it. So when I was at university, I was I hate my name, so I actually went by a Japanese version of my name, which is Kisu, and then I went for that for 5-6 years, all of my friends, and then as I kind of I've moved away from university friends and stuff, my name has slowly come back to being Keith again. But actually, my wife actually was called Catherine, who we're going through a divorce, but anyway, that's a whole other issue. And so we got called Katsu because the both of us together, and that was what we got called for 5 years. And I was okay, fine, whatever. But it was important. But actually, thinking about it now, that actually did affect me, and I didn't like it. But at the same time, I just I can't be bothered to actually fight it. So
can I jump on that quickly? I had a similar occurrence with a dear colleague. By the way, if you're listening, I love you to bits. This is not a dig in any way. But so my surname Katsogeridakis, not necessarily the easiest thing for anyone. Says there have been various kind of gimmicky, playful iterations that that
Mm.
people have come up with it, and my colleague's version of that is katsu curry.
Yeah.
So I do relate very much to the story.
But that's,
that you
the thing,
just
that's,
shared.
that's the thing. Like they think it's a funny thing, but actually, you don't know sometimes how much that can actually affect you, like over time.
Yeah. I think there's something about the katsu curry as well, about the fact that like it is another reference to like otherness and foreign
Mm.
things.
Mm.
So it does have that. I know that it's not malicious at all. And I say again, I love you to bits, you know who you are. But it is interesting reflecting on how actually your body reacts
Mm.
to when you hear those things.
I think a British cultural thing as well. We tend to take the piss out of people quite a lot with words and things. It's not necessarily meant in a malicious way, but sometimes actually it can affect you, but you don't necessarily want to say something and bring that power aspect back. You know, actually that people have power over you through what they say to you, and it's not necessarily meant aggressively or offensively, but actually it can affect you. And I think, you know, I think with what you were saying, actually, that is a really important aspect to think. Actually, what you're saying, is it offensive to them? Is it actually going to upset them? And there's actually a bullying in the workplace, especially in this country. People just saying things and going, "Oh, well, that's just the culture." There's that, and there's actually
Banter and stuff like that.
and the politics, the political stages. Apparently, there's quite a lot of people that get bullied continuously and go, "Well, that's what they do." And it's like, well, that doesn't make an excuse. Doesn't make it right. Which is about right. What is right language? Does it? Is it okay to turn around and call someone this or that?
Yeah. Banter is a really tricky one. I think I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I feel like I've oftentimes kind of performed banterously, which is now a word, because I wanted to, to be part of. I wanted to be able to interact with people in the way that I thought was pleasant for them, and so on. But I think just the culture of banter I find really, really problematic.
I don't think I considered the fact that was like an exclusively thing.
It is a very British thing.
Yeah, in many ways.
Yeah.
I would say that it probably exists in slightly different forms and maybe in slightly different ways in other places. But it does have a particular quality in England. And I think part of that quality is that you can't say no to banter.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying no to banter, you either take things too seriously, you're not fun, you're really soft.
Yeah.
And the list goes on. And that is really, really bloody oppressive because people are not given space to express whether they are happy being part of. I'm a lecturer, by the way. I lecture at Plymouth Marjoram University, but that's beside the point. Sort of beside the point. So when I a session with that I kind of have in store for when I feel it's necessary. If at some point we feel that some of those interactions become a bit problematic, I'm like, great, it's time for the banter session.
Yeah.
And we have this whole lecture where we talk about, banter has direction, banter is not neutral. And in order for banter to be what it is, it requires these components. It requires a degree of oppression. It requires a degree of belittling. It requires a degree of, picking on aspects that other people may feel vulnerable about. And so all of that is something that I tried to wrap my head around for quite a while, and I've decided I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I'm not wrapping my head around it.
I would still love to be able to explain it to you, but I'm a person. Very autistic people.
As a teacher, the amount of times I talk to students I was doing, and they go, "Oh, but it's just banter, sir." It's like, yeah, but when you turn around and call them a dickhead because they've just taken your pencil, that's not banter. That's you just being mean.
Yeah.
And I think there is that really weird cultural aspect. I think that we just go, "Oh yeah, it's just banter," and it's okay. Using the word "it's banter" means it's okay to basically abuse someone in a way.
Yeah.
I think that's actually
you somehow try and move kind of all of the significance or the weight. It's like you say, well, it was, and then you assume that you moved all of the affect components of what you just said. But if someone is insecure about, let's say, their weight, and I make a joke about, as I say, oh, it was just banter, all I'm doing is I'm protecting myself socially, but I haven't done anything for the effect that on that person. So it's completely self-indulgent in many ways.
Deflect all responsibility onto like, well, if you don't get it, that's your fault type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those ones that like I find it, because obviously I've been raised in the culture of banter, which feels like a very pretentious thing to say. But yeah, like I can't explain it, but it's one of those things that I think I've kind of assimilated to as a kind of like mimicking people thing that I do quite a lot as my fun little autistic brain.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like those kind of, I think this is the best at reading social signals I am with my friends, is like knowing when too much is too much, for if I've said something like inappropriate or whatever, but also like when, because my partner has some wonderful like very boysy friends, and in the like boys will be boys type, like just taking the piss out of each other type thing, not in an inappropriate way.
Mhm.
That whole like, but saying no once to something is normally be fine. But if they say no twice, like this is off limits, do not push this, because you have no idea what people are going through, and particularly with like good friends and stuff like that, you probably do know what they're going through, and so it's just a mean thing to do, to be pushing it. And like I think that's one of those things with banter, is the whole like you can say something which like probably totally fine if I said that to you or whatever, but if you said that to like someone on the street, you've no idea what's going on, and like anything can very easily tip someone, particularly without that context of like we're good friends, or like we at least have this like understanding and that like kind of like pre-relationship.
Yeah, a little bit. This is a little bit of a tangent perhaps, but I feel like that's probably
We do
okay
that.
considering the people that we are. It reminds me a bit of, some of the discourses and the points that people make around like being too PC, too politically correct, and then people go like, oh well, we can't joke about anything then. It's like, is that true? Is that true? Is that really the only way that you can be funny in this world? Because if that's the case, that's probably something we need to talk about and think about. Because okay, I don't know if this is useful, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like, if you are going to like target people with your humor, why not reverse that and kind of target the people who are not really vulnerable in society? Like, you can do that. Like, be radical with your humor. Don't channel it towards the people who are, and I really kind of put that within brackets, like easy prey.
Yeah.
Well, actually, so on that basis, like, you think about do you think like Jimmy Carr? He's very good at doing that kind of thing of like targeting certain people and making comments about things in a derogatory way, or like I think of old school comedians that used to do that. But even now, I've noticed, like, I've been to a lot of comedy stuff. I've got a friend to do a lot of comedy, so I've been going to a lot of their kind of things. And even now, there are people that make jokes about being ginger and stuff, and it's okay because they're ginger. It's like, well, no, it's not. It's still not okay. Like, but it's kind of become accepted. If it's okay to make jokes about this, or it's okay to make jokes about that. Like, if I made a joke about me being autistic, that's okay. But it doesn't mean you can make a joke about me being autistic, because you don't understand what it's like to be in that position. Yeah. So you can make a joke about yourself. I think it's a very different thing to make a joke for someone else to make that same joke about you.
Yeah.
I have a quick fire of 3 points to add to that. One, ginger kid at school ended up crying because someone just said like something about a ginger joke just on a bad day. And that was, I think, a very interesting thing for my year group. Number 2, Greg Davis, don't know, Taskmaster guy.
Yeah, Greg Davis.
Yeah. Binge watching Taskmaster at the moment, so I keep on getting all the adverts of like the Taskmaster experience. Anyway, he, I can't remember who the guy that said it first, like the comedian that was like, oh, you can't say anything anymore, like they've ruined comedy, blah, blah, blah. But he did a response to that, being like, if your comedy is solely based on insulting people that are like marginalized or whatever, you're not a good comedian. I think he probably said it slightly better than that, but that was essentially the point. And he's great. He's funny. He has a very, very good TV show that is on like 17 seasons or something. I feel like that's a pretty good point that, comedians can still exist in the industry without being horrible to people. Point number 3. Oh no, what was point number 3?
You've got this.
There was the Taskmaster point, and then there was the middle one, and then there was the ginger comment.
I did think it was.
Oh, yeah.
Go on.
No, I got it. There was a comedy clip that came up on my Instagram the other day, which was talking about neurotypical people as an opinion. And that was amazing, because you could tell the audience people that everybody else is neurotypical.
Good.
And yeah, and it's the whole thing of like, why, like, if you're uncomfortable with neurotypical people, make a script. That's the fact that, and you were. And so how does that work with autistic people and neurodivergent people? And if it's not okay for them to make jokes about neurotypical people, it's not okay to make it about like the disabled community. That's not all right. Don't do it.
No, but actually, just I think about power and language and stuff, and about. So obviously I have long hair, I have a beard, so obviously I look like Jesus. So I was walking along the
Are you?
road. Sorry?
Are you?
No.
Oh.
We'll talk about it later. So anyway, I was walking along the road, and I see two girls coming down, and they were giggling, and then they walked past me and went, "Good evening, Jesus." Just quickly just went to me as if to go. But actually, it's kind of something I've kind of empowered in myself. Do you know what? Yeah, I have long hair because I have sensory issues and I get my hair cut. And yes, I look like Jesus, but I don't because I'm such a Palestinian. But that's a whole other issue. We'll go down. Not gonna go down. But it's one of those things. It's just like it's either take it on and go, do you know what? This is who I am. I don't care. Or you can let it affect you. And I think sometimes not letting these things affect you and actually turning it on them, other people, can actually sometimes be quite empowering to you. Because I think they were like, "Oh, why did he say that?" Because one of the reasons actually why it's about language actually I think why I was kind of I kind of take on the thing as being Jesus when I was a student, when I was a teacher. I went through lockdown. My hair got, I realized I was autistic, right? That's it. And I'm growing my hair, which was great because I was able to do it. And then when I came back, obviously I had long hair and I was a teacher. And then one of the students once called me a big fat gay Jesus, and I just burst into laughter, going, "Do you know, that's really funny." And I've just taken it on, and then I just make it a comment of, "This is who I am. I don't really care." But it's one of those things. I think he was more offended by the fact that I wasn't upset by it, and I just took it on as, "Oh, mate, that's a fantastic, well done." And he was like, "Yeah, I take that's me, yeah." And it was like, "Oh, okay, I didn't realize that was."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just important. Sorry, come.
Sorry, I'm interrupting there, but I just want to say I think that's a really good point, and at the same time, it's useful to remember that to be in a position where someone says something to us and we feel like we have the frameworks necessary and perhaps the resilience, if that's the right words, to actually take that and own it and make it our own, is something that's probably come off the back of having experienced pain and kind of like difficulty with these things in the past. And it can perhaps be difficult when someone just says, "Oh, well, why doesn't everyone do that?" People are going to say hurtful things all the time. So actually it's up to the believer to take that and assimilate it and make peace with it. And if anyone's not doing it, it's their fault. Well, actually, it's really not easy. And because someone can do it now doesn't mean that they haven't had to suffer a lot to get to the point where they can hear comments like that and say, "Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to grab that. I'm going to make it my own. This is who I am."
Yeah, I mean, some days I still get offended by it. Some days it still upsets me when I'm in a bad mood and I've something else has happened. It can still make me feel. But you know what? I'm not going to change who I am just because they see me as something which I don't know. They just see long hair and they automatically go to a stereotype, which is completely wrong.
I really like your long hair, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people like my long hair, which is great. I like it. So. And also like heavy rock music, so it works really well in the mosh pit. So, which I think is another thing. I think sometimes actually that's another thing, isn't it? I think certain cultures within all have stereotypes. I think stereotyping is also a really bad thing about that power thing. Someone automatically sees you, and they make a stereotype about what that person is, what that person likes, and I think that's wrong. I don't know the word wrong is like that word, but it can affect you. Yeah. People go, "Oh, well, they like that," or they're like, "No."
I think, and like the judgment thing, really, really interesting. It's like evolutionarily, ignoring how that was pronounced, was something that was incredibly important. Like judging stuff, being able to figure out, like, okay, this thing looks like this, that means this. It's a really good way to protect yourself if it's like a bear or whatever. And so that is something that we have like continued to do in order to protect ourselves. That is a very important thing. But like when it comes to human beings with lives and feelings and all that kind of stuff, it's there was a thing that I saw like years ago where the first thought that you have is the thought that you were told to have, and the second thought is what you actually think. And so like, I don't know, walking down the street as someone that I am aware that a lot of the time I do look very feminine, and therefore I can be put into the same danger as women can in regards to, walking down the street at night or whatever. And so I will see like a man or whatever on the other side of the street, and I will go into the protection mode. If I know that guy or something like that, then that is the whole like, no, it's fine, probably fine, because person on the street that anything. But the thought is the whole like being raised like every man can do something to you, every man will do something bad to you. Very paranoid grandmother. Yeah, I was like a 14 or something. I was told off the outfit I was going to wear on the train because of like what could happen. Not a thing you tell a 14-year-old. This is not a
Nope.
very anxious person growing up, and I feel like that had something to do with it. But yeah, it's that whole like you were probably told that like I don't know, people that aren't white are bad. This is based on like Britain, like that people that aren't white are bad, and that people that are poor do all of this kind of stuff, and like manners mean this and stuff. And that's, yeah, that is the product of your upbringing, or a lot of the time product of my upbringing was those kind of like initial thoughts. But then I, you know, had like the ability to just learn things by myself. And turns out white people are not necessarily the better people. A majority of the time, significantly the worst people.
That can be quite a,
Yeah.
it's quite a common cop-out, isn't it, in nature? It's like, okay, so do you feel like you have A, no power, and B, no responsibility to work with that, given the context that we're in right now?
Yeah.
Because what you're describing is completely detached from this, from where we are at the moment.
And it's like that protection thing. Yeah, evolutionary good for protect. It's not protecting you.
It's like equally actually from another aspect is like because I'm a nerd, you know, I will fully accept that. And there's a shop that I go to, you know, has a lot. And someone turned around to me the other day and said, "Oh no, it's not their fault. They're autistic." I went, "No. That's not okay. At the end of the day, you may be autistic. That doesn't give you the right to turn around and call someone and ask. It's like that. That's not you being autistic. That's you being a prick. There's a big difference. It's like, yeah, do you know what? I may have autism. You may have." Like we tell you about the banter as a barrier to go, we'll say this because I'm autistic. Like, no, you can't. You still need to think about what you're saying. You still need to be respectful to other people. Like, do you know what? Yeah, I may say something occasionally. Like Mimi was saying earlier, you know, we may say something that people find offensive, but it's not necessarily because we're being offensive. But for instance, when you're doing it knowingly and then going, well, I'm autistic, so it's okay for me to say it. It's like, no, that's not okay.
Learning, I think, is the most important thing of like, yeah, in terms of, I don't know, you were taught English from a childhood. This is a bad example then. But like there'll be things that are inappropriate to say in England that were not necessarily inappropriate to say in Greece. And you're not going to know that until someone is like, hey, you can't say that. My aunt, she was from Brussels and she didn't understand why you can't call door handles just knobs. So we had to, that's not a good example for like offensive, but that is a thing that like, you don't say that in England because that means something completely separate.
Yeah.
And so she found out about that. She was like,
I mean, I did
strange.
I did have to, along those lines, I
yeah.
did figure out kind of the weight of certain words.
Yeah.
So like there are certain like swear words in English. I won't start listing them right now. And I would use them in certain contexts, but not having that cultural grasp of precisely what kind of gravity those words have, depending on how they're used, in which context, even with things like what kind of intonation you're using and what is the word within the sentence. It oftentimes put me in situations where I would say something and I thought it was a lighthearted, casual comment, and then everyone in the room was like, whoa. I was like, oh, what have I done? And so then, yeah, you know, I learned, you know, whether people should or shouldn't swear is a whole different discussion. But I did think, well, actually, if it's making people uncomfortable, I have a duty to recognize that and then adapt as I go on. So learning is really, really crucial.
And like, yeah, like what Keith is saying, like there are things that I've definitely said at some point that I have just totally not understood, like the weight of it, because it was like, I don't know, using a metaphor or something that just went straight over my head. But I heard somebody else say it and it sounded like the right context. I thought it was fine. Turns out it wasn't. So like, oh crap, didn't know that. Okay. And then you don't say it again.
Yeah, it's learning from what you've done, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like in the last time where I did this, I was talking about me saying sorry a lot, because it's a way of me being able to turn around and go, do you know what? Yeah, I've said something. Have I offended you? Because I've thought about what I've said and go, actually, that could actually, like from a learning perspective, actually that could be seen as thing. People go, you apologize. Did you? I mean, maybe sometimes when I don't apologize because I've not necessarily thought about what I've said, and I may offend somebody, but if I do, I'm always apologetic. Like, okay, I'm sorry. I'll try and think about the future.
I read a cool thing, like really just off the back of what you just said, and it was about confrontation, and it was talking about the value. Do we have time? Yeah, it was talking about the value and the importance of confronting people when of love, because if you to me something and I feel offended, or maybe you hurt me in that moment, you know, I kind of stand up for myself in that moment, say, look, I need you to understand that what you said over there was difficult for me. I'm setting boundaries for myself, but that is because A, I care about our relationship, and B, I love you enough to assume that by me sharing that with you, you will receive it well. I trust you to be able to do expressing my trust to you in that moment. I think it's just part of that dynamic of just healthy communication. Like, people really need to be able to say to each other openly, honestly, and respectfully what's happening, and that's what is sometimes lost in that kind of cultural nuance of what you should, or causing a fuss and ...
Okay, so coming up to that last 5 minutes, I think so. If you've got one sentence or with somebody about what you spoke about today, what
names are tricky. One thing I would like to say, I would just urge everyone and anyone to just be kind with each other, and to remember that language. This is a long sentence, by the way, and to remember language
This is like the fourth radio thing that I've done so far, and I have still never managed to come up with a sentence at the good sentence. I'm sticking with like, don't be a dickhead.
Fair enough.
Yes.
I
Straight to the point.
Yeah, I think powers were established that, you know, words have a lot of power over you people. So think about what you say and how you say it. And I think, you know, be respectful. Power and respect. But yeah, I think that's a good thing. We go leave it there.
Spent 5 minutes faffing around.
Right. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed today. Thank you. You want to go? There we go.
That was your best one of the day, by the way.
Thank you. There you go. See, all it takes is a little bit of practice. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.